Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Scruffy Nerf Herders. It's your main man, Boogie Bills, and Melgar Media over there. Yo, we're coming back at you with another episode. This one is actually the finale of Kenobi. It's going to be episode 6 of Kenobi. We're going to break it down. Let's just get right into it. Melgar, how'd you feel about this one?
As Star Wars content, I thought it was, they tied up some things really well that I enjoyed. Some things left to be nitpicked, just because, some of the writing from the beginning. But here nor there, I thought that they gave us a lot of what we wanted. There was a lot of really fun stuff in there. Obviously,
Totally.
seeing Vader and Kenobi, the way that they tied that up, and the scenes between Ewan McGregor and little Leia were so heartfelt and perfect.
Gorgeous.
I just felt that there was a lot of really cool stuff, and the being able to see Hayden inside the helmet was a peak for me. I was wondering if they were going to do that. It was kind of something in my head that I predicted and was really hoping to see. And when it came to fruition, definitely enjoyable.
Yeah, it was great, man. I mean, especially that Vader scene and like the shuffling between the voice, Hayden's voice, all that. I mean, closing that, it was fantastic. We got some great cameos in there too. I was really stoked on that. We obviously got the Force Ghost, which took probably center stage, but getting the Emperor back too. And just seeing like more of that, I think in this series overall will really prove to be really cool, especially if they develop that later on, because he's a great age. It just gets better over time. His voice gets better, seemingly. Gets more sinister,
Perfect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ian McDermott, it's just absolutely perfect for that role, and
So
he
perfect,
knows
man.
it, and he gives the fans what they want. And I think the prosthetic stuff that they did on his face and everything was the best since the originals after the digital change, I guess I should
Oh, yeah.
say. But I just thought that it was very reminiscent of just how sinister he was and how he's toying with Vader's emotion a little bit. And I kind of was feeling like he was fishing around to see if he knew anything about, if he felt anything about the kids,
Yeah.
which I thought they did a good job with, Luke getting knocked out and not seeing the lightsaber.
Yeah.
That helped with some canon problems, because immediately, the fan base would have been all over that. They're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
When he saw a lightsaber from Obi-Wan, he said it was the first time. So they definitely did see a lot of the canon stuff tie up. There was just a few things that I was concerned about, but as our friend Brad said last night,
Yeah.
when George Lucas was first putting out A New Hope, he didn't know the future of the franchise and didn't know how much he was going to be able to get
Well, it was an
onto the
idea.
big screen. Yeah, so you would have to think that he probably didn't think super deep, even though he had the idea in his head. He didn't go that deep in the film because he wanted it to be a complete film on its own if it didn't continue.
Yeah. A standalone.
So some of that I can look past. It's just the Leia thing was a little bit inconsistent, but it goes along with that. It's basically he didn't know
Oh, yeah.
what Leia and their future were going to be, and it could have just left it at that film. It would have been a great space opera that would have been a movie today, one of those that you call cult classic. They'd be
Yeah.
like,
Right.
oh,
Like a
missed
Repo
and-
Man.
yeah. So I can let some of that slide, but I thought there were some really really good visuals. Obviously, the fight between Vader and Obi-Wan was super dope, and I really liked
yeah.
that they took some elements from Rebels and Clone Wars, and it
Yeah, the
opens
look
the
of
gate.
Vader's mask when it gets sliced really has that look from the cartoon series, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? And
yeah,
just like how he looks and just how his eyes look too. I mean, that was really fantastic. Those
yeah,
parts of Vader and how they're doing. I think you touched on it in the beginning part when you were talking. One of the best parts about, I think, this episode specifically was just how it looked, the aesthetic. The cinematography was great. The way it was shot was fantastic. It really harkened back to that original trilogy, especially, and kind of not necessarily look like A New Hope, but led you almost into that look. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And how it went.
Yeah.
I thought that was, I mean, I'm getting literally goosebumps talking about it right now. And just how, the storytelling of that and how it looked all kind of coalesced in episode 6 to really give it that Star Wars feel. I thought that was awesome, and I think you touched on another one when you're, talking about, Vader and the fight and all that. Just that fight was awesome. That harkened back to all the fights that we've seen between them too. We've been waiting for this duel, this epic duel, and we got it. We totally got it. It's undeniable that we got it. I really like that. And as far as like, I think the thing for everybody is, and I think it's important for us, we talked about it a little bit, you were talking about maybe the plot hole with Leia and stuff, but I think it's important for us to remember exactly what you just said. George Lucas in no way knew the universe that was being created when he first sat down to pen this. I mean, he had an idea, and it was just opening a door. Where we take it from that point, we'll probably step on some toes because there's a lot of people going through this doorway. But how we take it as fans really shows how we are as fans. To me, I see, there could be a bunch of hoopla about another glaring loophole that was, a kind of a plot hole that was opened by how is Qui-Gon a Force ghost when his body doesn't disappear, everybody else's does to become a Force ghost. You could argue that maybe it was the first one, it was a work in progress. I don't know. There's a lot of things that could be argued about that or debated about, but to me, that's just what being a fan's all about. You find these things that could be portrayed as maybe a loophole or a plot hole or something like that. But to me, that opens it up to how that art is depicted to you as a person and how you intake that art and how your brain interprets that. So to me, it's not really arguments or over who's right or wrong. It's really about your interpretation from that person's artistic representation of the source material, right? Everybody's going to have it a little bit different than, George Lucas and stuff. So it's like for me to see it rendered in this form, to see all of the looks come out like this, to especially with his voice, some of the lines that we got, I mean, stunning. It was really awesome. For me, it was just so awesome. I'm like, I want more. Are we going to get more?
That is the biggest thing, and I think that segues perfectly into, the subject of some missed opportunities or questions behind why they made some of the decisions. As you said, some of those plot holes, maybe some of it was changed or left out due to the demand of like, we do need more.
Yeah.
For me, I felt like they could have easily done episode, what was it, 3, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
And it would have been more relevant to me.
Maybe just as like a movie sort of a deal.
Yeah. And even if it was just straight on Disney Plus, who would not have watched that? It's like the dragging out of for the 6 episodes and not giving what they were promoting was really getting to me as not a lot of screen time for Hayden.
Yeah.
Which when they first, brought that to the table, of course, everyone's kind of like, well, how are they going to do that? His helmet's going to be off a lot, or going to be a lot of flashbacks. Is it going to be this and that?
It's classic Star Wars. They hit it all those ways, right? We got flashbacks. We got helmet on, right? Vader's always been helmet on, helmet off. In every form that we've seen him, multiple different actors playing Vader, voice actors. I mean, so it's just, I think we got it all, and in that sense to say it. But I agree with you. I think this, in my opinion, I think Kenobi should have been a 2-part maybe movie direct to Disney Plus. And I'm thinking of that from the most fiscally viable situation for Disney. I think it would have been a great boon for them to really like seal them in on the streamer wars for having just amazing content. I'm not saying that a show doesn't do it and you can't always go back to it, but I think everybody agrees that they haven't really been pumping out those movies, at least the spin-offs, since Solo, And this was a perfect opportunity to have maybe 2, Kenobi 1 and 2, split off maybe the Reva story a little bit more and flesh that out more. I want to see, maybe a live action Riva story with all the rest of the Inquisitor origin stories. To me personally, I think that's better in cartoon form. You can easily hit the kids, all the different species that are probably Inquisitors, how they look, the different times, how crazy it's going to be. And, really, Star Wars has been hitting home runs with all the animated stuff. And you could make it like the other shorts series, and just make them more 30-minute, a little bit bigger as shorts about each Inquisitor, And then that would have been in between the Kenobi series. And to me, that would have hit Disney's thirst for monetization, with Star Wars. But to me, I just see something went down after Solo that didn't happen in Marvel. And I think until it happens in Marvel, which I believe will probably happen at some point, neither here nor there, it's not going to come back to Star Wars. There's somebody up there that's not making the right choices financially for Star Wars, and it's coming down the pipelines as well, too, in the art form as well. Because to me, what I saw with Kenobi was really two stories separated together, meshed together, that kind of got a lot of negative publicity and people talking and hoopla, which, it doesn't matter who you agreed with. If you split the stories, I think that dissipates. You flesh them both out a little bit more. Everybody gets what they want, and you get more money from it too, right? No matter what, all these things are going to become rides later on from Disney. So treat them like that. You know what I mean? Like, put the service into it. I thought this was a straight 9 out of 10. You know what I mean? Kenobi, this beautiful series. But my problem is that this should have been a 20. It should have been an 11 out of 10 for Kenobi. And then on top of that, you should have had, your Riva series or your Inquisitor series, cartoon series, that should have been a 9 out of 10. Too. And then you can flesh those out as well too, on top of adding a lot of clout to Disney Plus. So that was really my thing where I when I got done with this, it's not that I was like upset. I was so happy to get this beautiful Kenobi stuff, but I was like, man, I want more. And I see actually 3 stories in this Kenobi series, because what about Leia? Yeah. And now that we have Leia at this young age, are we going to get more about her? Are we going to see her growing up? Do we get, if any of you guys know Expanded Universe, will we get Winter in play, who's a phenomenal character? Will we see Wedge? Because we already saw him.
I just saw yesterday that Millie Bobby is in talks for a Star Wars role. So I think that you're fleshing that out. They did the side by side, and even did like the slight CGI change of her and
I mean, that would be perfect.
In A New Hope, and you're just kind of like, wow, it'd be a great casting, and I think she would take that role extremely seriously. But budget,
did she do a great service?
Yeah, I think that you're so right on the budget part.
Yeah,
it's like, look, they've just done
about that earlier.
Mandalorian and Boba Fett. So you have Tatooine sets already created in the U.S. as well as in Pinewood Studios, right? Mm-hmm. You've got it all set up. So why would you not just spend a little bit more to make this movie quality? Because you look at shows like The Boys and, again, Stranger Things, and you're wondering what kind of budget they're working with, but the writing is just immaculate.
Yeah.
And the cinematography and everything doesn't really have to do so much work to make it look, pull you away from reality and put you there. Like with this one, you're like, it needs to look more Star Wars-esque. Yeah. I want it to look like OG Star Wars. It's like, it shouldn't be that hard of a task for
definitely
a studio that size with that much money and just frivolous amounts of money to go with. And instead of doing movie, you find that happy median, and you just go budget heavy on 2.5 hours instead of 6 hours.
I think this is why it's coming down to Disney. I think that's why, because I think they're breaking this down much more into an episodic event, right? So they're paying by episode, they're paying by that. So that's why we see in episode 6, they have so much more money. Episode 6 got a lot more money per episode than any other one of those episodes.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? That ate a lot of money. And, so they don't always need these big grand set things anymore.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think Disney's looking at it differently. I think Amazon looks at The Boys as a season affair, and they're like, every season we're going to spend 200 to 300 million on a season, just like a movie. Disney's like, this episode, 100 million. This episode, 15. This
yeah,
episode, 15. You know what I mean? And that works
yeah,
for something like the Mando, where you have helmet, and they could
yeah.
easily do this with Star Wars. And that's kind of my problem. That's what I'm hitting on. I'm worried. I know that at Star Wars, we've got good people at the helm. We've got Filoni, right? We've got Favreau, Kathleen Kennedy, proven entity, regardless of how you feel about her or where she's at. Sometimes I have my qualms. Proven entity, successful. So to me, Raiders of the Lost Ark, exactly, bro. To me, I think something's up at Disney. And I'm worried because some of the best content, in my opinion, in the world comes from Disney. You've got Marvel. You've got kids' movies that I have watched thousands of times on repeat because my kid will literally... Dude, Ron's Gone Wrong. Oh, my gosh, bro. Whew, man, I know everything about him. You know what I mean? So it's like, are they in good hands? Because I just don't think that not only are they making the right decision financially for Disney, because this could have been 3 shows right off the bat. You could have gotten into production, original trilogy kind of bangers that would satisfy the crowd while you're coming out with all the new awesome concept ones, the Cal Kestis one that's coming out, all these new bangers that are going to rock. Ahsoka, new characters, new storylines with old storylines working together. And I know they have the money. That the money is not the issue. The problem is pulling the trigger with the money. Disney has the money, but in my opinion, I think they're playing it a little too safe. This was a really safe bet. This should have been a safe and easy 11 out of the park. And instead, we're getting, internet trolls, hating on a character so much that you got to have original trilogy characters coming to their defense. And I think a lot of that could be avoided just by making a little bit smarter of a decision for the company and for the IP. And I think it's honestly at
Couldn't
this
agree
point,
more.
I kind of had an epiphany after watching this. I was like, man, I've never liked something so much while also kind of fearing for the future too. Because I'm like, they knew that this was going to be a success. This was an easy gimme home run. You know what I mean? And they did it. They got a home run. But why be satisfied for a home run when you could have that Babe Ruth calling it, that moment, that momentous occasion that this could have been on its own, possibly as a movie, and then release it to Disney Plus first, and then, break new barriers, and then be like, have a bone, go see it in the theater. And guess what? I would have went 7 times in the theater. If it, I'll watch this show a bunch more, but I'm probably going to only watch episode 6, maybe a couple more sprinkled in because of O'Shea Jackson. I just love Ice Cube's kid. But, I sit back and I'm like, man, I want this to be, I want a couple more sprinkles of epic, And I'm just, as a wanting fan, I'm not saying don't change anything. Don't go back and change anything, okay? That's kind of the problem that we're seeing right now with some of the, you're going back, you're adding McClunkies. Don't go back and add 10 McClunkies into the Kenobi series thinking you're going to fix it. Let's just move forward. Let's hit this Andor series going full speed, Ahsoka has the potential, get this, to open up doors to new worlds and the Star Wars community. Yeah, I
Thank
mean,
you. Be here
if
all
they
week.
don't bring in the Gates and Ahsoka, I'm going to be upset. But overall for me, 9 out of 10 on this series. Solid. The final episode was an easy 9.5, 9 for me. The cinematography, fantastic. The set pieces, fantastic. The characters, fantastic. The droids, fantastic. It was banging.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
I think that as you mentioned the gates, I feel like they could have helped their own, Disney as a whole could have helped their own reasoning for having so much story take place on Tatooine by saying, "Hey, there's actually a gate here," or
Yeah.
at least at the end of this, mentioning like
How about
clues,
a final
or
cutscene and in the end credits, just like Obi-Wan in the desert finding a
There you
stone
go.
with the same
Yeah, with the
writing.
marking. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. That's like perfect little interlude to it.
Yeah.
But I also just feel
I respect that
that
they're separated too. You know, I
yeah.
respect that, and I think that's cool. You know, and that's what I was kind of griping about earlier is I wanted more just Obi-Wan, you know.